I'm Janet Neal, the host of Superbwoman Sundays at 7. I'm so glad you could join us. I'm here today with my guest, Beatty Cohan. So happy for you to meet her. Beatty and I have met along the way. We go to different events, and I didn't really know her all that well until one time I heard her speak. And she was phenomenal, let me tell you. Beatty is an internationally known psychotherapist. You might have heard her as an expert on the radio or on television. She has a wide-ranging practice, but her specialty areas are relationships and sexuality. And may I just say, I learned a lot from her when I heard her speak. She's really an expert. So I'm so glad that you could join us here today.
It's terrific to be here with you, Janet.
Oh, that's great. And we're here on the set of Beatty's show. Tell us the name of your show.
Ask Beatty, and we're here in beautiful New York at the Progressive Radio Network studios.
Excellent. And her show, you can hear it every week, Mondays at 3 o'clock. 3 to 4 Eastern Time.
Right, and then people can also go to the Progressive Radio Network archives and listen to, today is the 123rd Ask Beatty show that I've done.
Wow.
And I have close to 150,000 followers, so it's really exciting that for people who are not able to listen live every Monday from 3 to 4, they can go back and they can, hear all the different shows that I've done. So it's nice for people who, are not able to actually be in the moment on Monday afternoons.
Oh, that's great. So tell us your story. So you told me a little bit about it, when we first sat down here, but Beatty was telling me how when she was 7 years old, she would have her transistor radio listening in Canada, where she's from, under the covers at midnight. Your mother must have loved that. Listening to this call-in therapy show.
It was. It was a show, actually, that was hosted by a man. I can't believe that I still remember his name, Pastor Eglund. Huh. And this was every Sunday night at midnight. And my parents, they did buy me this transistor radio, and they did not know that at midnight their little girl was listening to people calling in and asking for help. And I was fascinated because in my home, helping others was really a very, very big part of our family life, and I'm an only child. So topics from segregation and racism and poverty, that was just the way I grew up. So I always knew somehow that I was going to be helping people. Of course, I didn't know what psychotherapy was, but this radio show, it just fascinated me.
Wow.
And, who would have thought all these years later that I've hosted, many, many Ask Beatty call-in counseling radio talk shows. So it happened a long time ago when I was a little girl in Winnipeg.
Oh, that's fabulous. Wow, Winnipeg, far away.
Far away, yes.
And then you were saying that you were in the U.S. and you were a practicing psychotherapist, correct?
Yes. Yes, I've been practicing psychotherapy. I can't even believe it, Janet. It's now over 35 years. And I treat people from all walks of life and various different ages, people who are very ill psychiatrically and people who need tune-ups. And, of course, I do a lot of marital therapy and sex therapy and people who are suffering from depression and anxiety and addictions of various different kinds. And I'm fortunate that I really had wonderful, wonderful training at McGill University. I have postgraduate specialization in marriage and family therapy and sexual dysfunction. So, yes, I was very well trained and have actually been a real critic of American mental health, which is in part what my Ask Beatty show is going to be about today.
Excellent.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And you have a book.
I have a book, yes, and the book is For Better, For Worse, Forever, Discover the Path to Lasting Love. It was published by a publishing house in Boston. I did research, actually, with 450 people in the Boston, Providence, and Connecticut area. And what I did was I developed a 10-step formula, which actually really works, because I'm very bottom line. If it doesn't work, let's just not pretend that it does. to actually help people assess in their relationships who is right for them and who's wrong for them before they commit. So well, I give workshops all over the country. The workshops are called Rate Your Mate Before It's Too Late, Never Make a Mistake in Love Again. And then I also have a workshop, Stop Domestic Violence Before It Starts, Never Make a Mistake in Love Again. This has actually been endorsed by many, many people, including Governor Bush and Laura Bush and
Wow.
Charlie Crist, who was the governor of Florida, who actually appointed me to the Florida State Commission on marriage, and Nicole
Wow.
Brown Simpson's, Denise Brown, I'm a part of their Speakers Bureau,
Oh,
has
interesting.
said openly that had her sister, Nicole Brown Simpson, known about the formula and had actually used the formula, that she would probably be alive today, because there are always signs, and I really deduced that relationships succeed and fail basically as a result of 4 different reasons. And number one, and this is really important that we as women, that we really take this in. And the first thing that absolutely needs to happen is that we need ourselves to be in a good place emotionally, psychologically, psychiatrically, because if we're waiting for the prince or the princess to rescue the damsel in distress, we are going to be very sorely, sorely disappointed. Number 2, the majority of people have not had the opportunity to learn the ABCs of the ingredients that actually go into a successful relationship. I mean, when you look at all the shows, as an example, on Bravo, and all of the dysfunctional relationships, and I've been trying so hard over the years to see that relationship education be a part of the curriculum in the schools, and I've had varying success, and certainly not the kind of success that I would hope that would happen, because the kids, people simply don't know the ingredients that go into a healthy relationship, and of course if you don't know what goes into it, you are in no position to be able to assess who's right for you and who's wrong for you. And number 4, again, people have not learned the ABCs of successful emotional communication and problem solving. So we function at a real disadvantage, and then we wonder why we are doing so badly in our relationships. And it's all about education. And people being serious to want to do the work. And this is not sexy, and it's not romantic, and it's not fun, and it's about really taking care of business, because what I have found is that we take much more time and put much more energy into assessing what kind of a house we're going to buy, and a car, and a TV, and a computer, and we don't think about the importance of really educating ourselves about relationships. And because we don't, we operate at a disadvantage. We are not empowered. We are not educated, and we really put ourselves at risk.
Yeah. Wow. That is very powerful. That is very true and very powerful. And to your very first point, that if you're looking for somebody to save you, it's never going to work.
No.
And that is really the whole premise behind The Superb Woman. It's about taking the time to understand who you are, to be yourself first, because then you're in a powerful position.
Exactly.
It's your inner power.
Right.
So how did you tap into your inner power?
Well, because I always knew that I wanted to help people, I was on that helping path, so to speak. But I was not a natural in all kinds of ways. I was shy. I mean, the fact that I host a talk show and that I've appeared on, hundreds of national radio and television shows, I still sometimes think, gee, how did this really happen? But I had to put in the work. I think for me, you know, Dale Carnegie was really the beginning. I mean, in graduate school, I remember they went around the room, and I had trouble, Janet, just saying my name and saying why I wanted to be at McGill and what I was hoping to achieve professionally. So it's taken a lot of work. It's also taken a lot of work emotionally. I mean, life was not always smooth.
Yeah.
But I was determined that I want to live the best possible life, and I'm not willing to make excuses. So I've had to do my own due diligence,
right?
And it across the board in my relationship life, as a mom, and at this point, I think for me, this is the best time of my life. I'm fortunate. I'm in love. I'm going to be getting married in a couple of.
I didn't even know that. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. And I have clarity about life now that I didn't have, I think, even 5 or 10 years ago. And I want to be able to help other women to clarify where they are, and much more importantly, where they really want to go, and motivate and inspire them to do whatever it is that they need to do to get to where they want to go.
Right. You know, you make a really good point about doing the work. That, you know, so often in our society, you know, we are so used to the quick fixes and the emotional reactions to things. And so it's really about taking that time and doing the work that's necessary to really understand yourself.
And being honest with
being
oneself.
honest, absolutely.
Yes.
Which is really hard.
It is really hard. And I know that people who call me for therapy, I mean, taking that step, it's very difficult. And yet everybody who I see will say to me, gosh, we wish that we had called you or another therapist 5 or 10 or 20 or 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Because time goes by so quickly. And, you know, my mantra is acknowledge, address, and resolve. And take whatever action steps that you need to take so that you're going to be able to reach your potential and live the life that you deserve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So who helped you on your path? I always say we can't do this by ourselves. So who's helped you on your path?
My dad.
Yeah.
My dad. My father was really an incredible dad, and he was also my coach. And this is probably something else you don't know about me, is that I competed nationally in tennis and badminton and figure skating and table tennis throughout my entire childhood.
Wow.
And my father, I was number 10 in Canada as a junior tennis player, champion. So my entire life, actually beginning at age 3 when I began to figure skate and compete, had to do with working and honing one's skills and making mistakes and coming back. And, you know, he would always say to me, you know what, okay, honey, you lost the match today, but tomorrow the sun is going to come up and you may have to toss the ball higher with your serve or bend your knees. So there was always that motivation that you might strike out today, but that tomorrow, he would always say to me, you might hit a home run. And as an athlete who, again, competed, and I still do, I understand about losing and winning and staying in the game and never giving up. And that was his philosophy. And that is a philosophy that I really tried to impart to my patients and to friends. But that there are things still that we need to do. It's not enough to talk about never giving up. I mean, there's work to be done. It's like, why are you continuing to lose your matches? Or why are you continuing to be in these dysfunctional relationships? We have to figure this out and then be committed to making the changes. So when people call me, the first thing I ask them is, are you serious? Because if people are not serious, I don't want to waste my time, their time. And people only are serious, Janet, when there is a crisis. So that when people are hurting a little bit, that is virtually never the time that people call me. It's always a disaster. It's an affair, it's a divorce. I mean, there's some major, major crisis, and actually that is the best time for people to really want to work hard. And I oftentimes wish that I could fast forward this crisis so that they wouldn't wait 10 or 20 years before really dealing with their issues. Another thing that I want to say about therapy is that so many people are looking, as you say, for the quick fix.
Right.
And when people work with me, we really have to deal with the unfinished business from people's past. Now, you can't change anything that's happened a second ago, but there is a way to really emotionally work through the traumas and the disappointments, whether it's abuse of any kind or sexual abuse or things that happened or didn't happen, in their family of origin. Otherwise, people are never quite in the moment. They're sort of, they have one foot in the past and one foot in the present, so that for me, we have to go through that process, and then we can start to deal with today. And today's problems and issues and what needs to be done to help people to move forward. So it's a process. And I was talking to a man yesterday who actually called me from Florida, and he was seeing a therapist who said, I'm not going to let you talk about what happened in your family of origin. And I said to him, you really need to find yourself another therapist. It's fine to be in the moment, but again, there are certain shortcuts that you just can't take because they don't work.
Right.
And I'm all about what works, what doesn't work, and after 35 years plus, I think I've kind of figured it out.
Yeah, sounds it.
Yeah.
So another thing that I talked about in my experience in meeting and having the delight of meeting superb women like yourself is that superb women, in addition to learning to be themselves, recognizing that they can't do it by themselves, they also have learned to let go of the shoulds in their life. So how about you? How about any shoulds in your life, or have you learned to let go of them?
No shoulds. I have no shoulds at all. There is one thing that I absolutely feel very strongly about. Maybe that's a should. I have zero tolerance for any toxicity of any kind in my relationships with people. So after assessing, who's good for me and who's not good for me, I don't have anybody in
any kind of relationship
at all that is toxic. And I'm very clear about what that means. And that doesn't mean somebody who's always agreeing with me, but we all know when relationships are painful and frustrating and destructive and self-destructive. And so that's the one should, none, zero.
That doesn't even sound like a should to me. That sounds like a very clear thing. Because my experience is the shoulds contain the guilt.
Yes.
And when you let go of the shoulds, and I like to say I lead a should-free life as well. And I have learned that when I let go of the shoulds, I can do that when I'm really aligned with who I am.
Right.
That I'm not relying on somebody else's opinion of what I'm supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
So by you saying that you are self-aware enough to know that you will not tolerate being in relationships with toxic people, that's very aligned. There's no should there.
Yes. It probably should not, and people have to be very clear about that. But if you're needy and lonely, and your self-esteem is really iffy, and this is why it goes back to being in a good place ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Emotionally, psychologically, psychiatrically, so that we're not putting ourselves and enabling and encouraging destructive and self-destructive relationships.
Right. Do you have any advice for people who find themselves in a toxic relationship? What would be the first thing that they could do to...
They should call me. they have to be willing to acknowledge, of course, that this is not okay.
Right.
And that they want to make some changes, and that they need to understand, how did all of this begin?
Yeah.
And usually it begins in one's family of origin, and that's not blaming anybody, but that's the reality.
Right.
You know, somebody was saying to me yesterday, Sunday, I worked yesterday, was that they got so used to being in toxic, abusive relationships that the familiarity was something that they just almost vacillated toward. And that when they were around nice, lovely people, it didn't feel right. It felt bad, and it felt wrong because they were used to the toxicity.
Right. Yes, I've heard that from more than one person.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. So, you know, I talk often about how gratitude has, I see that in women, superb women. How does that play into your life?
I am so grateful for everything that I have and that I've had. And, you know, I say to Jim, my fiance, every day, how grateful I am, how grateful I am, and it's really true, Janet, how grateful I am of the view on Riverside Drive, how grateful I am that I am able to really live the life that I want to live. I've never taken anything for granted. And I think that that's something that I learned in my childhood. My parents were very grateful, grateful for the little things. And
so they modeled that behavior for you.
They did. They really did. There was never this the sense of entitlement as so many people have.
Right.
And it's the little things, like Jim will bring me coffee in the morning, and it's true. I mean, I could get used to it, but I'm grateful. And I express that gratitude, which is something that we all need to do a lot more of.
Right.
You know, the thank yous and expressing appreciation. In fact, in the one of the shows that I did recently, there was a study talking about, you know, what was the most important things that people really valued in their lives. There was a 75-year Harvard study that was actually done, which was amazing. 75 years.
Wow.
75 years they followed people, yes. And the results were pretty clear. It was about love, it was about connection, and it was about gratitude and giving back. And it was not about the bigger, better, more, the car, the apartments, the plane. It was not about any of that at all.
Right.
But again, first of all, we need to be okay. Otherwise, we're not able to grasp any of this.
Yep, that's very true. It's very true. So what's next for you? What are you doing these days? Besides your show and getting married, a couple little things.
Everything. I feel that, you know, life for me just is continuing in all facets. The practice is my passion. I mean, I love my private practice. I love to educate people on the Ask Beatty show. I love to do my psychological commentary and analysis on national TV and radio. I love to educate. I work out regularly. I'm playing the best tennis of my life.
Wow!
Thank God, I'm healthy. So for me, I feel like I'm 29 years old, and I just want to continue doing everything that I do with no changes. So when people talk about, you know, retirement, I don't relate to any of that. I feel that I have learned a great deal just from living, of course, professionally, and I want to continue to impart that knowledge to women and men everywhere. And I'll tell you something really interesting, Janet, and people are very surprised to hear this, that 80% of the people who contact me for therapy, 80% of the people who listen to the Ask Beatty show happen to be men.
That is interesting.
Very unusual.
Yes.
Very unusual.
And why do you think that is?
Well, I'm a pretty tough therapist. And the men that I deal with are men who are used to working very, very hard. And their lives, of course, when they contact me, are completely falling apart. And they've checked me out, and they know that it's going to be a hard-hitting, it's going to be a compassionate and loving experience, but it's going to be very hard-hitting. And it's been like that for at least the last 25 years, and it is very unusual. So that initial call, you know, whether it's for marital therapy or family therapy, happens to come from men.
That is very, very interesting. Yeah, and I can see that. I can see that women would, well, that men would be attracted to the, you know, what's the answer? Yes. What do I have to do? What do I have to do?
Right.
Right?
Right. Yes.
And I think women can learn a lot from that as well. I think, you know, and I'm sure you see this a lot in your practice, you know, how even though I am so pro-woman and I'm all about women's empowerment, there's so much that we can teach men, and there's so much that we can learn from men as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
You know, absolutely. And once women, of course, are engaged, at least engaged with me, of course, you know, they work very, very well.
Yeah.
Because there's a goal. I mean, the people who I treat, I don't want to treat them for 25 years. I want them to, you know, work out the underlying issues as best as one can, deal with one's history, and move forward, and do, and reap the benefits of life, whether or not they're talking about meeting a partner or dating. I mean, and there's a certain kind of energy and enthusiasm, of course, that I feel for life that I hope that I'm able to really, you know, communicate to people, to motivate, to inspire, that it really can be better. There's some things that you need to do.
Right.
And as your coach and guide, I'll help you, you know, hone some of those skills. But let's stop complaining and moaning and whining. And talk about, well, someday I'm going to do this. Let's commit to what needs to be done. Let's do it and change your life. So that's what I'm all about.
That sounds perfect. Well, Beatty, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, to share your ideas, your wonderful philosophy, your great energy. So tune into your show, which is coming live in a few minutes. We need to get going.
Absolutely.
And so tell us again one more time how they can see your show or listen to your show.
Okay, you can go to the Progressive Radio Network. You can go actually right now, and you will hear the Ask Beatty show live, and then you can go to the archives on the Progressive Radio Network, and all you have to do is Google Ask Beatty Archives, and you will be able to listen to 123 shows, and 150,000 people follow me on a regular basis. In fact, what's so interesting, every day, because I really check the numbers, between 750 and 1,000 new listeners tune in to listen to the old shows.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
So hopefully,
well, I think you got something to say.
Thank you. I hope so.
So thank you. And join us next week on Superb Woman Sundays at 7.